really interesting line, and I think it's episode 2 of season 4, where she goes, "What is going on?" And I say, "We had nothing to do with the violence against the Duttons." And she says, "You really believe that?"
This episode of the Dutton Rules podcast is a double episode. Yellowstone prequel 1923 begins on Paramount Plus this Sunday, and Taste of Country's Sterling Whitaker was able to chat with the cast, including Harrison Ford, ahead of time. But the OG Yellowstone is still rolling, and Billy Dukes had time with one of the show's great soft-spoken villains. John Emmet Tracy played Ellis Steele, the cunning Market Equities lawyer that literally stumbled upon the Yellowstone Ranch way back in season 3. We haven't seen him lately, but you'll learn that his fate hasn't been decided yet. I'm Addison Hager, and if you're a longtime follower of the Dutton Rules podcast, you may recall the conversations around 1883 getting just as heated as those around Kevin Costner's Yellowstone. Together, we worked through the history and landscape of an era few people knew much about. That's the plan for 1923 as well. After the first half finale of Yellowstone, our Monday recaps will turn to 1923, and the Thursday interview episodes will feature as many cast members from that show as we can get. And we've had time with quite a few already. Tap follow if you have not yet done so, and leave a 5-star rating and review at Apple Podcasts to let others know we do Yellowstone here. Staff at tasteofcountry.com is the email address for questions, comments, and corrections. Today is Sterling Whitaker breaking down 1923, followed by Billy Dukes with John Emmet Tracy, aka Ellis Steele. Thanks so much for listening to the Dutton Rules podcast. This episode, I am so excited because we officially get to talk about 1923, and we have Sterling Whitaker on with us today, who has personally gotten to talk with the one and only Harrison Ford, which, Sterling, I am still so jealous.
So am I. I'm jealous of myself.
For those who do not yet know what 1923 is, it's a prequel to 1883. It all ties into Yellowstone that we are watching now, season 5. It's coming, the Western expansion's coming, Prohibition's happening, the Great Depression, lots of heavy topics. And we have, Harrison Ford, like I said, and Helen Mirren are playing. Harrison Ford is playing Jacob Dutton. Helen Mirren is playing Cara Dutton. Sterling, jumping right in, before I want to talk about Harrison Ford first, but to begin all of this, what knowledge did you come in? Had you seen the screener yet for 1923?
I've seen one episode, so it's just enough to sort of be... just enough to become aware of the characters enough where you're not just going into an interview blindly like, who are you?
Right.
But yeah,
right.
That's all I've seen though.
With your knowledge of, 1883 interviewing those cast members and even Yellowstone interviewing those cast members, how did you, we've gotten to talk before of just you getting to interview the Yellowstone cast the second time around and kind of that decor, that interaction and familiarity. How was this 1923 going in knowing who you're getting to interview? I want to know kind of your emotions and just like how you prepped for it.
I just prepped for it by watching the episode and taking some careful notes and looking up some of the background of some of the actors just to have a little bit of a sense of what else they've done. In the case of Harrison Ford, I usually don't get tremendously excited about interviews because that's what we do all the time. But Harrison Ford,
right.
Yeah,
it's our job.
That's a different story altogether. I used to have an action figure of that guy when I was a kid.
Are you serious? Did you tell him that? You probably didn't have enough time.
No,
you did?
I did not. I did not tell him that. I don't do that thing where you gush over people because I think it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You don't get a good interview, But yeah,
right.
I used to have Han Solo stuff. I had a Millennium Falcon when I was a kid. So it was pretty interesting. You go in there to talk to this guy.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. No, I'm the same way. I always tell people, I'm like, at the end of the day, they're people. And, so I get not gawking, but man, that's cool that you used to have a Harrison Ford action figure, which that leads me into, getting to talk. Let's talk about Harrison Ford, who plays Jacob Dutton. And gosh, there's so many J's on this show, who plays Jacob, or in this franchise, Jacob Dutton. He, Harrison Ford has played, when I was looking back at things that he's played, and he did do TV early on in his career, but you can for sure start noticing a trend later in his career. He mainly solely did movies. And so did you get to talk to him at all about kind of that transition now back into television?
So this was a roundtable, and everybody was asking questions. And one of the questions that came up first, of course, it's an obvious question: why make the transition from film back to TV? He's never done a TV series, I don't believe. So this is his first foray into headlining a TV series, and so it led into a really fascinating exchange about how TV has changed over the years.
Right before we're going to get to what he had to say about starring in the television show and part of that roundtable, but Sterling, what was kind of your takeaway? Anything that you found noteworthy from what he said?
Just how, and this is something that, this conversation has been going on in TV for a while about how streaming has changed the game. Television, you don't have to build toward a Pepsi commercial every 15 minutes now. You can write it very differently. And really, when you're watching Taylor Sheridan's work, you're watching movies that he breaks up into incremental blocks rather than watching something that's written like a TV series.
Well, that's it's obvious once you say that, but didn't even really think about that when it comes to the writing and even how those actors interact in that way. Harrison Ford, obviously being a very notable actor, he's played in so much. What was he like, Sterling?
Surprisingly normal. As you just said, he's just a human being, doing his job, but he does not carry around a big mantle of like, I'm Harrison Ford. Surprisingly humble. Kind of more humorous than I expected. He gave really, really, really well thought out and serious answers to the questions. But there was one point where he was joking around with one of the people on the junket, and it was just hilarious. He's actually kind of self-effacing and funny in that way too.
Here's what Harrison Ford had to say about the transition of movies to a television show.
There's not much difference between, for me, for an actor, there's not much difference between shooting for television and shooting for a feature film. There may be actually more time to develop a character over a number of different episodes than you have in a 2-hour film. But it really is the only difference really these days, I believe. We used to think of television as having less ambition, perhaps, than feature films. It's no longer the case at all. This is one of the most ambitious undertakings I've ever taken on, and I'm so pleased with the what I've seen so far, because we're in post-production on much of it, but we have the first couple of episodes locked, and I'm delighted by what I see. I've been enjoying working with very high-quality actors and actresses, and we have the technical capacity and ambition to shoot this the way it was a feature film. It's quite beautiful to look at. I'm thrilled with the whole project.
To follow up on what we just heard with Harrison Ford, what made him, Sterling, decide to do this project?
It's really interesting. It turns out that it's just mainly two things. Taylor Sheridan himself, who seems to have this weird knack for just calling up legends and saying, "Hey, man, wrote you this part. You want to do it?" I mean, he just does that, like Sylvester Stallone, just randomly. Hey, I know you don't do TV, but you want to do this, and Sam Elliott, people like that. So part of it is just his personal force of personality to just call people up and ask them to do stuff, and that's what happened here. Harrison Ford didn't see a script before committing to this show. So that's how good their conversation was, how effective he is at getting people to kind of sign on to things.
I based my decision on personal meetings with Taylor. There was no script at the time we agreed. One of the real draws for me was the opportunity to work with Helen again, to play my wife, Helen Mirren, who was the first one aboard. So when Taylor and I met, and it probably preceded the script by at least 3 or 4 weeks, and so he talked me through what his ideas were, and I was impressed by his articulation of those of his ambition and his sincerity. And when I got the script, I was very gratified. I think it's very interesting. It's ambitious again, but it's a character very different to any that I've played so far, and that interests me. I'm always interested in working with new things.
Sterling, you also had the chance to interview Darren Mann, who plays Jack Dutton, and then Michelle Randolph, who plays Elizabeth Strafford, which I've said this to you before, but I personally geeked out, a big Bachelor franchise fan. Cassie, her sister, was on The Bachelor, but that's a complete tangent, but I knew I was excited for that reason. I felt like, I came with a lot of knowledge to the table, but what was your questioning? Like, what did you want to get out of that interview with them?
Well, these they were paired up as an interview, and I went into that wanting to know. And again, it's about Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. You're sort of a younger actor walking into scenes with these two cinema legends, and I would just think that would be terribly intimidating. If you let it be. So that was my first question to them: is what was it like walking into a scene with Oscar winners and Oscar nominees? Would be stressful, you would think.
Well, and to that point when you just said you would think, were they, and we're going to hear their response, but were you surprised by their reaction or their answer?
I don't know if I was surprised by it, but I was gratified by it. You never know if somebody's going to carry around a star attitude or not. And both Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren are in a position where if they did, nobody would be able to do anything about it. They just have to live with it because they're in the position they're in, So it's kind of gratifying when you hear that people are not like that.
Did you get to or did they talk at all of kind of the interaction? How we've heard, Kevin Costner stays on the set, or not as much anymore, but in previous seasons, he would kind of linger around. Did you get to talk about, did Harrison or Helen do similar, or are they just too busy potentially in and out?
They didn't say how much interaction they had with them, but they did say that they'd gotten to meet them before the show. So that kind of breaks some of that ice of walking in and bam, you're right into a scene,
When you said that they got to meet them before the show, they didn't have to do cowboy camp or anything like that, like Faith Hill and Tim McGraw had to do, or did they?
I don't know if Harrison or Helen did, but some of the other actors absolutely did. Yeah, some of the ones who were doing a lot of... I assume Harrison probably did because I think he rides in this thing as well. So, yeah, they do the whole 9 yards of learning how to use the equipment and the saddles, the weaponry, the whole 9 yards.
So cool. And to kind of bridge the gap here on the potential, the lineage here. So Darren Mann, who plays Jack Dutton. So this is when I had, Billy knows his family tree well. And this is when I had to kind of look back and go, okay, how is Jack Dutton related? So Harrison Ford, so Jacob Dutton is, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jacob Dutton is James Dutton, who was played by Tim McGraw in 1883. They're brothers, correct?
That's correct.
And then Jack Dutton is James Dutton's son. And so, or no. Sorry.
I think Jack Dutton is John Sr.'s son.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. Thank you. And so this would make, so Jack Dutton would be Jacob Dutton's great nephew, right?
Perhaps.
Okay. This is when we phone Billy. Where's he? Okay, never mind.
It gets too complicated for me, I really don't know.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was trying
When I
to,
was taking
pull
notes
that
on this, I was
distinction.
actually having to look because they sent an email from the network knowing
Oh, okay.
knowing fully well how confusing this is, identifying each character so you're not in there going, and you are John's second cousin once removed, right?
Right. And you're the ranch hand? Oh, no, sorry. You're Jacob Dutton, Harrison Ford. Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Well, here is what Darren and Michelle both had to say about what it was like working with Helen and Harrison.
Obviously, you're working in a cast of really, really big heavy hitters. When you're walking into your first scenes with a Harrison Ford or Helen Mirren, people like that, what's that like for you? Do you feel a sense of intimidation at first before you become more familiar with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely there's an element of that. Thankfully, I mean, Harrison and Helen are both such wonderful people that as nervous as I was before my first scene with them, it was like quickly, they just made you feel so comfortable and they were so kind. And we were able to meet them before we started filming, which was really nice. And as the season went on and filming went on, I just grew more and more of a fan of them, even though I was already the biggest fan possible.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's special when you grow up idolizing these people and watching them in your living room since you're a kid, and then I get this opportunity now to work with them. It's really a dream come true. But even better than that is when you get to meet your heroes and they turn out to be such cool people. I mean, so refreshing. It's so cool. Both of them are so down to earth, so easy to chat with. They set a great tone right from the beginning. So they cut that nervous whatever stuff out right away because they made it so easy to be around them.
Amina Nieves was one of the actresses that you were able to talk to. Sterling, tell me, number one, what was your biggest takeaway and kind of going into what you had hoped that you would just get to know more about her, but also who does she play on 1923?
So she plays a character named Tiona Rainwater, and although nobody has said so, I would assume that she's a precursor to Chairman Thomas Rainwater. I mean, I would certainly think that that's where they're going with that character. And it's really interesting because she is a brand new actor. This is really her first major project. So,
Wow.
My main curiosity about her was what it's like to walk into such a huge production like that. And it's really the first thing you've ever done. Is
there anything that surprised you even about, what I love about Taylor Sheridan is that this is not uncommon, that he doesn't overlook someone who hasn't necessarily had, major film background or TV, you know what I mean? It's just like your talent, honestly, you could have nothing, but as long as you're talented, heck yeah, you're in. Her disposition, is there anything that her as an actress and as a person that you kind of really took away as impressed by?
She's very, very articulate. The performance that she gives in the first episode is pretty impressive, and
yeah.
Just a little bit of backstory. So in 1923, there's an American Indian, there's a school for American Indians run by the church in Montana, and she attends that. And then there's a particular nun that's very, very hard on her. And so that's her backstory. And of course, we have no idea where that's going, but I'm going to assume somehow that she might flee that school. And maybe she ends up helping start the reservation. I'm not real sure, where that's going to go. But it's really interesting because her character has a very difficult storyline, and she's a pretty sunny, upbeat person herself. So there's a remarkable difference between those things.
Wow. Yeah. She, for those who are listening, we got a screener of 1923 before it airs this coming weekend. And yeah, she plays just a really, I'm thoroughly impressed that she, acting wise, it's not this long list of heavy hitters. I mean, she's really talented. And interesting though, because she does play, at least in the first episode, it's a very dark and heavy scenes that she's in. So interesting to hear that, she's not the same as her character. Kind of like we've talked about the Yellowstone cast of, how sometimes you're like, is Rip and Cole Hauser potentially the same person? You know what I mean? And interesting to hear that obviously she is not.
I could see her being a sort of a breakout star of this thing if her character arc continues. I could see her being the Elsa of 1923 and really garnering a lot of attention for herself from this role. Amina, this is your first really major acting role. Do I have that correct?
Yes, you do.
So there's nothing like starting small. Did you go into this with a sense of
Stress? Yes. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it was wild. I think everything kind of happened so quickly too. Essentially though, I came with it knowing the deep honor that I have by doing this. Because this is not just for me, it's for everyone, and not even for everyone on Turtle Island, but for all Indigenous peoples that are in this planet, and there's so many. I mean, listen, I think it's I think we're all getting to a point in this generation where we're really acknowledging the fact that we are all Indigenous to somewhere, and the importance of that, of getting back to our roots.
And for the last cast member, Brian Drarity, who will have many other, Sterling will get to talk to many other cast members as time goes on, but these are the ones that we have for the podcast today. And he plays Zane Davis, who is a ranch foreman, which, Sterling, is he anything? We know one ranch foreman, and his name's Rip Wheeler on Yellowstone. What is this? Who is Zane like?
It's funny. We don't really get that much of a sense in the first episode of what Zane is like. He's not a major character in the first episode. So they establish his presence, but we have absolutely no idea where his storyline is going to go or what, we're going to see a lot of development. But yeah, it's funny you should say, is he Rip? Because that's my question to Brian was, it's obviously going to draw comparisons to Rip. And so my question to him was, how do you articulate the character differently so that you don't reinforce that sort of comparison?
And is there anything, what did you kind of take away from that before we listen to what he had to say?
It's interesting because he, you want to phrase a thing like that carefully because you don't want to offend some guy and say, hey, you're just another Rip or whatever,
Yeah.
And it's funny because because actors can get so part of their job is defending the character,
Touchy,
so yeah. So you don't want to tread on anybody's toes. And it was interesting because he did have a really interesting insight into how the two characters are different. Your character of Zane is the ranch foreman. That's going to invite some comparisons to Rip. How do you differentiate him and make him like not just 1923's version of Rip?
Yeah, so I think he's just a different energy altogether. I think, but the comparison would be right. I think he's more straight down the line, a little more composed in terms of Rip. Rip's like a bit more in your face, and I think Zane will get there. But I think Zane's way of dealing with things are like, let's talk about it. We'll figure this out. He's more practical in his approach.
Thanks, Sterling. 1923 begins on Sunday, December 18th on Paramount Plus, the streaming service you need to pay extra for. Now we'll turn the conversation over to Billy Dukes for his interview with actor John Emmet Tracy, who plays Ellis, the Market Equities lawyer.
Hey, Billy.
John, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
No problem. Thank you for joining the Dutton Rules podcast. Where are you zooming in from today?
Right now, I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Okay. And I just got back, I think yesterday. I'm sort of losing track of time, from Fort Worth, where we did the big season 5 whirlwind weekend of premiere galas and parties on ranches and red carpets and screenings. It was pretty great to get together with not just the cast, but the cast of 1883. A lot of them showed up, and
nice.
A lot of the people from Paramount and 101 and Bosque Ranch. Like a lot of it was nice to all be in one place and to celebrate this thing, and to watch it together. We all watched the premiere together while people at home were watching it.
So full disclosure here, John and I are talking between episodes 2 and 3. So his character Ellis very well may die in episode 3. We have no idea yet. But tell me about that party. I saw some pictures of it, and it kind of made me a little green with envy. It looked like a good time. Did you get to meet anybody new, or spend some time with any of the cast that you've really gotten to know through the years?
It was great. It was a lot of times when you're making a show, you do get to spend some time with people, but you're quite you're busy. Everyone's got a job to do, and so even the crew that you've known for a long time, I got to sit with a bunch of the guys from the crew and watch the show, which was we never get to do anything like that. You're working at such a schedule and so to sit and watch what people have done together and sort of give some fist bumps to people when like when a shot was incredibly executed or something, that was cool. And then absolutely, there, as you probably know very well about the show, a lot of the different sort of storylines don't interact. And so the Cowboys don't get to come into the boardroom, and I rarely get out to the ranch, at least on camera. We've done a lot out there sort of during off time. During the pandemic, we would have events out at the actual Yellowstone Ranch, which was a lot of fun. But so to get to talk and to hang out, and then truly a treat for me was to meet a bunch of the people from 1883. I've never met LaMonica before, or Eric. And so to get to hang with them a little bit and catch up and just kind of, it's sort of like we're part of the same family, but it was a bit of a family reunion, the cousin you never get to see. That was cool. Yeah.
We've had Eric on the podcast before. He's a super nice guy. Great conversation.
Great.
And a really talented actor as well. A funny man. I found him to be really, really funny.
I know. Isn't that interesting? Because you watch these things and people are involved in these incredibly intense, dramatic, tragic stories, and then you meet them, and just funny guys.
What was the scene? I mean, coming out of episode 1 and 2, I mean, the big action was probably the death of Monica and Casey's baby. But I think to me, the scene that was most difficult to watch was probably Beth really grinding down Jamie with the yes ma'am scene. I mean, I'm sure that was made intentionally so it was difficult to watch. What was it like watching that amongst the cast, and maybe even Kylie Riley was nearby, watching her tell Jamie to say yes ma'am? I mean, it was brutal on screen.
It was pretty cool, wasn't it? It was pretty I will tell you this, so that was from, now correct me if I'm wrong, that was from episode 2, right? The second half of and I should tell you that the screening we did was just episode 1. So a lot of us have then since seen episode 2, but I wasn't with the gang. But I agree with you, that was quite an intense scene. And this storyline between them, it's one of my favorite parts of the show, is to watch this thing. I don't know, a chess match. I mean, it's more like a wrestling match, I guess you could say, that has been growing between them for all these years. And, Kevin Costner said it best recently in an interview. He said, we're not, the foot's on the gas and we're not slowing down. And I think you're going to see, their story really start to ramp up too. And I think what you're talking about, that particular scene is sort of an introduction to a new phase of their relationship.
Do you know all the particulars about how season 5 goes and ends?
No, not all. So we're actually not done fully making season 5. I don't know if you know that. We're sort of doing it in 2 halves. Yeah.
Right.
We so we're done up to about the halfway point, and then we're going to come back in the new year and do more. So most of us don't know anything about the back half of the season. We all have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen in this big chunk. And, even the scripts. So, for example, the episodes that I'm not in, most of the time I won't be getting the scripts. Although sometimes I do. Sometimes they send them to me anyways because it might be relevant to something my character will say in the next episode or something like that. Sure. But you do piece things together. And I think one of the fun things about being on a set is there's an awful lot of, hey, man, did you read 6? 6 is right. And you go, yeah, I read 6. Oh my, wait, how? And there's a lot of that going on. Or someone, or you'll see somebody. Water cooler talk, yeah. And
Yeah.
or you'll see somebody with episode, whatever 7 in their hand, and you'll glance over their shoulder to see what page they're on, and you'll be thinking, just wait till the end. So there is an awful lot of shared
Interesting.
rumor and kind of that kind of stuff. It's great, and so I think I do have a pretty good sense of what's happening, and some of it, Billy, if I could, I wish I could. I wish I could tell you because, yeah, I think people's minds are going to be blown by some of what goes down. It's, I mean, my jaw was wide open when I heard some of these. I was just astonished, like shocked, and somebody told me, certain details that obviously I won't talk about today, but I just can't wait for the reactions of people, once this thing plays out. It's going to be the best season yet. And I know everybody says that, and I'm certain I said that last season during interviews, but I don't know how he keeps doing it. But Taylor Sheridan, he's got a natural storyteller's sense of keeping the balloon in the air, or keeping the ball in the air, and making it go higher each time. I mean, I don't know how you feel. Like, how do you feel from season, 1 to 2 to 3? It just keeps ramping up, doesn't it?
It does. To me, I have a special place for season 2 because I loved the Malcolm Beck and the Beck brothers as villains. They were just, to me,
Right.
They were my favorite villains because they were truly villains. Season 4 really delivered after a pretty high bar was set on season 3. And now, of course, we're getting into season 5. I've only watched a couple of episodes, so TBD. It's funny. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that up about the Beck brothers because, all week in the lead up to the premiere and during the weekend and a lot of the prep we were doing, people keep saying to me, well, you're one of the big villains. And I keep saying, well, I'm the only guy in the show that hasn't murdered anybody. I'm just going to work and doing my job and doing what I'm being paid to do. And, you could argue that it's not, he shouldn't be there and his company shouldn't be there. And I think that's seems pretty clear, right from the first time you see them coming over the ridge, a bunch of suits on the hill, they're so out of place, and I think even just figuratively and metaphorically, it's an image that, sticks in your mind as fish out of water for sure. These guys don't belong here. So, but yeah, is Ellis a villain? I don't know. He's not doing what the Beck brothers were doing. That's for sure.
Well, it's like you're looking at my notes as you talk there, John, because that was literally my next question. Because I saw, I think, an interview with Forbes you did where they described you as the villain. And it's like, wait a second, he's getting in the way of the Duttons, but I'm not sure villainy is on his mind quite yet. He's just, you're a man doing his job, as far as I can tell.
Doing his job. And, I think he clearly, Ellis and Market Equities have done this before. They've done this in other communities. Yeah. They come in, they take care of business, and they wrap it up pretty quickly. I don't think when Ellis got off that plane, in season 3 and got to work, I don't think he had any intention of being there a couple of years later. I think he thought he underestimated. I mean, I've been saying it, but I think it's safe to say at this point that the entire, New York contingent came out and severely underestimated not only the Duttons, but just the way of life and the connection to land and legacy and heritage in Montana in general. So, which is why you're starting to get a hint that Caroline Warner and Ellis and everyone at Market Equities are saying, well, if the obstacles are this high, then we're going to need tactics that match that. So.
Where are your boardroom scenes filmed at?
Right. So the main Market Equities boardroom is shot in an actual office building in Missoula, Montana.
Okay.
So that's a real office building, and a lot of times we'll go in there and do multiple episodes in a day, sort of on a weekend or something. But once in a while, you'll see sort of the hallways of that building, or particularly if we're going in the capital, in the state capital, so sort of Jamie's office or the governor's office. Those things are usually, although not always, they're usually done on a soundstage. And that used to be in Utah. In seasons 1 through 3, those scenes were all shot in a soundstage near Park City. And then, when the pandemic came and we were working on season 4, there were a lot of regulations and a lot of unknowns. It was kind of a new thing for everybody. So everyone they kind of condensed everything and brought it all up to Montana. So we had, as far as I know, I don't think we've been back to Utah since. Although it was great working there, it was a wonderful place.
Sure.
But of course, as soon as we all centered in Montana, then the storyline started taking some of the cast to Texas as well. So we sort of traded Utah for Texas.
Tell me about filming scenes with Jackie Weaver. I mean, Jackie, of course, plays Market Equities CEO Carolyn Warner, and her presence on screen is larger than life. I mean, she's a tremendous actress, and her character is really great as well.
Yeah.
How do you approach those scenes to give her enough room? Just how do you approach them, I guess, is the question.
I just enjoy every second of it. I can safely say she's one of the most delightful people I've ever met. She's so much fun to be around. She's a great hang. She's fun. She's great with the crew. She loves to joke. She's got a wicked sense of humor. She loves to laugh. The other thing is that I was thinking about this recently. She observes everything. She's sort of one of these detail people, and any little thing that's happening with the crew, she'll sort of notice the dynamic between them, and she'll point things out that a lot of us are sort of got our heads in the script or in the moment, and she's kind of, and I think that really is one of the reasons why she is the kind of actor she is. So to give her space, it's like a great game of tennis or something. It's just a lot of fun to bounce things off of her and to not know what she's going to do. And I don't mean that like she's not she's not erratic or in that way. She's unpredictable in the good way. There are changes each take, and there are nuances and new things that come from her that allow you to have a different reaction each time. So I love working with her. I hope I get to continue doing it.
Is this a case where your theater background really helps you kind of give her that space and respond to her genuinely?
It's sure. I would say for anyone who's come up that way, like she did as well. She started in theater and had a long, successful theater career. There is sort of a common, how will I say it? Like a common rehearsal and play and those kinds of things. That's sort of like base camp for a lot of actors. When we know that. Having said that, there are a lot of actors on Yellowstone that perhaps haven't had a theater background, although we don't always sit around and talk about that. So I don't actually know, but I don't find that makes a massive difference. I think it's the environment created by the job you're working on, and Yellowstone is a place that allows the actors to experience those moments. We're not rushing in the sense that there's no time to, some shows you work, there's one take and you move on. You get a little time to find it. The directors on Yellowstone really know how to sit with an actor and have a chat, and they do it in an economical way where we're not taking all day discovering like what's my motivation. We're not doing that, but it's a collaborative and creative environment, and so working with whether it's Jackie or with Dawn, who people are starting to see, or those really fun scenes I got to do with Kelly last season, where Beth and Ellis clearly don't like each other, and that was just fun. We were doing a lot of laughing off camera for those things because of some of what we had to say to each other, especially her. To me. Yeah, so I'm trying to decide if I've answered your question. I think anything that has come into an actor's sort of process or experience informs who they are. And I do think Jackie and I speak a common language and we work well together. But I have a feeling that whether she or I had never done theater before, it might still be the same way because the environment we're working in is just so conducive to creativity.
John plays Ellis Steele on Yellowstone, and this is now your third season on the show. Of course, we're in season 5, but this is the third season that you've stuck around. I think a villain sticking it around for 3 seasons is pretty accomplished. You're the longest lasting villain currently, aren't you? Because Carolyn didn't come until season 4, I believe, or the end of season 3, maybe.
I guess so. I guess so. I guess I'm I've definitely had a few different sets of bosses come through from Market Equities, and I'm the consistent thread. I showed up at the beginning of season 3 saying, "Just wait till my bosses get here," and now several bosses later, we're still threatening, but it's gonna we're starting to learn the rules. I think that's the thing. I don't think we there's a great moment where I think it's a season 4 definitely a season 4 where Ellis says, the New Yorker and me can't trust that. And Beth says, "You're not in New York now, buddy." And I think that was such a great moment. And I think it was an eye opener. Not that they would let her know that, but I think it was an eye opener for everybody. Like, you know what? She's right. We're not in New York, and the New York tactics aren't working here. So I think we've now come to a place where we understand we're either going to play by the rules that are clearly set in place, in motion in this culture and in this community, or we're going to have to pack up and go home.
I feel like
we don't want to pack up and go home.
Rules should be in air quotes on the Yellowstone, because they're rules, but they're
exactly.
They're a different kind of set of rules, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You brought it up earlier, but your very first scene, I believe, was that scene where you are walking through the field looking at this new land that Market Equities has acquired, and you come across a rip, and you're just sort of naively traipsing through the field in an expensive suit and presumably very expensive shoes. And it's kind of a wonderful contrast. To what extent was sort of that you as an actor, like this guy from the Midwest coming into Montana and the ranch in the wilderness? Did you have kind of a little bit of a naivete about the landscape you were entering into, much like Ellis did walking onto that?
Well, it's interesting. If I may just touch on the premise of your question first, I actually don't think he was naively walking through that field. I think he knew exactly what he was doing, and he gave the impression. In fact, I'm certain that's where we were heading with it. He certainly gave the impression like, "Hey, fellas, what's going on? What are we, I don't know where I am here. I'm on the wrong side of the fence. Oh, forgive me." I think he knew full well that coming over the hill with the troops was going to fire a shot across the border sort of thing. And, I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but Ellis is really the first character I've ever played in my career where I made a conscious decision ahead of time that, and this was just from Taylor's writing, just reading the way I interact with different characters. I just decided Ellis is somebody who actively attempts to be who he needs to be in the moment, depending on who he's with. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't have integrity or that that he's a liar or those kinds of things. But if you watch even my first episode, I'm pretty friendly and, "Hey, buddies," with those guys out in the field. And, "Oh, gee, I wouldn't know my way around the fields if it was very," and then he charges me with the horse and I go, "Ha ha ha, come, let's go for lunch." You see me, the very next scene you see me, I'm with Chairman Rainwater, and I'm intensely dismissive of him and condescending and possibly racist. There's some like, whoa. And then the next time you see me is with Governor Perry, and it's this 3-page sort of monologue of facts and figures, and I'm an A+ student, and I've got all my homework finished, and I'm ready to put this deal. And then you see me with the bosses, right? And very much taking my place as kind of a right-hand man, or, at one point you see me carrying luggage for Caroline. So I think he knows how to fall into who he has to be when he has to be it. And I actually don't think there was anything naive about that tactic at all. I think he knew exactly the message he was sending by showing up there, and he couched it in a kind of friendly, buddy. Not that they bought it, by the way. They didn't fall
work,
for that
no.
for 1 second. It did not work. No. So on to tactic number 2. But to answer your question, being out there, that was in Utah. That's one of the exteriors. They normally would do the exteriors all in Montana, but that one was shot in Utah, and just such a beautiful place. And we knew, every single one of us knew going out there how cool this was going to look. And Stephen Kay directed it, as he does with so many of the episodes. And he really wanted it to look weird, to have these suits coming over. And, none of us were in proper walking shoes. And we were all twisting our ankles. And I remember there being a lot of, I don't know, snake holes or gopher holes or something. We were all stepping in them and sort of twisting ankles. And that felt great, because that's kind of what it would be like for these guys. But I don't think it was, I don't think they were really lost.
Denim is in demand at Plato's Closet in West Ashley and North Charleston. Get cash on the spot for everything denim. Bring in your trendy and classic styles of gently used name brand denim. Get paid for your denim shorts, skirts, jackets, jeans, and more. We're looking for denim that is blue, black, or a bold color. And jeans in styles like mom jeans, bootcut, baggy, flared, and ripped. We want everything denim. Sell your denim for cash at Plato's Closet today. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Okay, fair enough. I think I'm gonna have to go rewatch that scene. I'll have to peacock it, I guess. To go
when
watch
you do, Billy, watch the very
eyes.
end. Oh, sorry
Right.
to interrupt. I was going to say, when you do rewatch, you take a look at what happens with Ellis the minute the boys ride away. Right, his smile drops, and you can sort of see that he's sort of gauging if this tactic worked and if he's going to have to try something else.
Okay, I'll do that. I don't know if this question is an out of bounds question to ask or not, but have you filmed any scenes through either of the seasons, 3 or 4? I know you can't tell me about 5, that have gotten cut, or was there any action that you were kind of anticipating that ended up getting cut from the final script? Or the final show?
Not much. I mean, there was actually one tiny bit in. I don't know if I could talk about it. There was a tiny little piece in episode 1 of season 5. I don't think there's any great spoiler here, but Caroline and Ellis were actually at that outdoor speech that Dutton gave. And we exchanged a little bit of dialogue there, but it wasn't critical to the plot. It was just, there were more people in that crowd than we ended up getting to see. Is sort of, I think the idea was everybody's there to see what he's going to say and to see what measures he's going to put through. And he certainly came out with some strong ideas, but no, other than that though, I think it's probably easy to assume watching that crowd that there were, players involved sitting out there watching that had different vested interests in what was about to happen. So other than that, no. I mean, I think everything has gone in, and I think the real fun is watching later what takes they went with and what tone. Sometimes you'll offer them different tones for a scene, or the director will say, "That was great. Now let's try another one where." And you really come in stronger, or you really pull back on that a little. And that the scene could play so many different ways depending on what the director and the editors choose together. And that's really where I think you've probably heard this many times. That's where the performance gets built. Ultimately you give them options, and then they sort of piece it together later, and it can read a whole different way. For example, at the screening, there were moments that that all of us in the theater laughed at. I'm trying to think of what they were, because I think you might ask, but I can't specifically remember. There were moments that didn't really read as comedy on the page, but we all laughed at collectively in the room. And none of us making it had intended for them to be funny when we did it, but it just timed out, and it was fun timing, a little bit of those kind of like lighter, unexpected twist or something. Yeah.
Just a couple more minutes here with John Emmet Tracy, who plays Ellis Steele on Yellowstone, and has been on the show since season 3. At the end of season 3, one of the popular theories was that Market Equities, and maybe even specifically Ellis, was responsible for the attacks on the Dutton family. How much fun was it to sort of navigate through those conspiracy theories and for some people even to think that maybe your character had something to do with blowing up Beth and shooting John and all of that.
Okay, so I wasn't. We weren't told, as I'm sure you probably have heard. They don't sort of tell you as you're leaving, you're the one. So we were all kind of joking about it. Like, was it you? No, was it you? I don't know. I have no idea who it was. And so Taylor knew, certainly. He probably knew before he ever started the show. What was going to happen.
Right.
But so I didn't know, and I don't go on and read a lot online. For a guy like me, I play an awful lot of what you'd call antagonists or something like that. And I know from the people who recognize me on the street that they don't want my character in Montana. They wanted to go back to New York. And I mean, people are very nice to me. They basically say the same thing. They'll either say, leave the Duttons alone, just in an airport or something. People will say that to me, or they'll say, you must be good at this because I really want to kill you, or I don't know, some kind of a like compliment couched in a threat, or a threat couched in a compliment. I'm not really sure how to say it. So I'm sure there were a lot of people that were hoping it was me. They were hoping it was Ellis so that he could get sent to the train station. No, I just the thing for me, Billy, is I love being part of this. I don't know how this sounds, but I love being part of a storytelling team. I like being part of this is what they want told. I want to help tell it. And Once Upon a Time is something that I love so much. And if I'm the antagonist or the protagonist, and I've done both in my career, I don't end up enjoying one more or less. But to answer your specific question, I think there's something interesting about villains too, because with heroes, we sort of can anticipate how they're going to act. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can kind of predict where they're going.
Right.
And this goes back to, even ancient literature with the antagonists or the villains. They're unpredictable. And so you kind of keep your eye on them in a different way. And that does make it fun to play. Did I think I had been the one to kill the Duttons? I actually didn't, because as you and I have said already here today in our chat, I've just been doing my job. I haven't broken any laws. I haven't threatened anybody really, other than in kind of just you wait till my boss gets here kind of talk. It's been all done in the courts of law and legal filings in the state. The county registrars and places like that. So yeah, I didn't think it was me, but it sure was fun opening that first script of season 4 to find out what it was and who it was. It was, I think everybody was excited by that. And then to get back down to Montana and have everybody go, whoa, who knew? And we're kind of like comparing notes and predictions and things like that. There was somebody on the crew who sort of got it right, I think. I can't remember who it was. It was somebody in the makeup department, I believe, who had kind of said, I think it's, and sort of didn't quite tag them. I don't want to give spoilers away here. I'm assuming your listeners have seen it, but I won't go further. But yeah. But there was somebody who I think kind of got pretty close to it.
No, we can definitely spoil here. I didn't think it was you, but I didn't think it was Garrett either. I think at the time I thought,
right.
Maybe someone unknown, or I kind of liked the theory that biker gang that they beat up in season 3 had something to do with it. But there was enough conspiracy theories to keep everybody entertained for a long time.
And they had certainly made enough enemies where you had a few candidates to choose from.
Yeah.
But there is an interesting line. If you watch Caroline's entrance, Ellis picks her up at the airport. There's a really interesting line, and I think it's episode 2 of season 4, where she goes, "What is going on?" And I say, "We had nothing to do with the violence against the Duttons." And she says, "You really believe that?" And that kind of slipped by everybody,
Yeah.
That kind of skated by everybody. And you could easily argue what she meant was, look, everything is intertwined. Like everything, the fact that we're here and this is going on, this is all kind of, the flap of a butterfly's wings affects it could be that, or who knows? I mean, I'm honestly not giving a spoiler, or I don't have an answer for this little riddle that I'm putting out, but that did get said in the episode.
That is one hell of a way to end this conversation. That just seems like a big old meatball of a tease there, John. And I know you don't mean it that way.
It isn't.
I don't know if the audience is going to believe you. You're on the inside. Who knows what you know? You're an actor. You could be, looking right at me and lying to my face, and I wouldn't have any idea.
Well, Billy, I like to believe acting is telling the truth. So being as truthful as you can with a thing. So, but no, I know what you're saying. I promise everybody that is not me dropping some big, hurricane on everything. I don't have any reason to believe that that's a thing. I do really believe that Caroline meant, everything's connected, buddy, or we wouldn't, I think that's what she meant. And, also when there's that amount of money going into a state, for example, she could have been saying, all these investors or all these people or all these local businesses that are going to benefit from this, maybe they're angry that our business dealings are being thwarted. Maybe they want the income or the revenue. She might have said there's some, residual concussive, ripple in the water or something. I'm not sure, but I know you don't believe me, but I'm telling the truth.
I believe you. We've been talking with John Emmet Tracy. His character is Ellis Steele on Yellowstone, and the first half of season 5 is airing now on Paramount Network, and then we get the second half sometime in 2023, and filming still to go. So you'll resume filming at some point here for season 5.
That's right.
Okay, cool. So now we know Ellis lives through the first half. So bit of a trick there, John.
Well, I didn't say that. I haven't seen the scripts,
Fair enough.
I could get a script that says, "Oh, that horrible, whatever he caught. Now he's dead. Here we go." So who knows?
Thank you so much for joining the Dutton Rules podcast today. I appreciate it.
Billy, thank you. I really love what you guys are doing here, and I've listened to a couple that you've done, and I really enjoyed them. So, and I love being here. Thanks for having me.
That's the cunning Ellis Steele talking to Billy Dukes, but his friends probably know him by his real name, John Emmet Tracy. Thanks to his team for arranging this interview, and thanks to Harrison Ford for taking a little time to talk to Taste of Country and Select Media earlier this month. I'm Addison Hager, and Dutton Rules is written by myself and Billy Dukes with the help from Sterling Whitaker, and the show is produced by Billy Dukes. Top follow and leave a 5-star rating and review before you leave, and be sure to check out the archives for interviews with Ryan Bingham, Breckin Merrill, Cole Hauser, and more. Go on and mark your calendars for Tuesday, December 20th, because that's when our next recap episode will come out. Then we'll take Thursdays off until after the holiday, but continue making recap videos and audio content. In the meantime, have a great holiday, and remember, Dutton Rules, a Yellowstone 1923 podcast, is another Jolly Town Square Media podcast.
This podcast is sponsored by Cloud Optimizer.
As a business owner or IT manager, are your cloud investment costs going up and you don't know why? It's time for Cloud Optimizer. As you migrate your business to the cloud, what you're spending and why you're spending it can get a little hazy. But Cloud Optimizer clears up the mystery and puts the cloud to work for you. Cloud Optimizer starts by analyzing usage patterns, right-sizing resources, leveraging discounts you may not be aware of, implementing automation, and much more. And by reducing unnecessary expenses and maximizing performance, Cloud Optimizer guarantees you a savings of 5 times what you spend for their service. As you utilize cloud-based services more and more, you don't have to lose sight or control of your spend. You can stay agile, streamline your costs, and optimize your performance, plus save significant money with Cloud Optimizer.
Make the cloud work for you with Cloud Optimizer. Get a free assessment and find out how much you can save by going to cloudoptimizer.com. Go to cloudoptimizer.com for your free assessment. That's cloudoptimizer.com.